We are live.
This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story once a week. My name's Gerald.
I'm Andy.
And I'm Anais. I feel like
I'm Andy, half asleep.
Andy covered in snow, or maybe more internet delays. But yeah, I need to.
Oh, yeah, it could be internet.
Well,
yeah. And all of the brilliant insights have to come from you guys because I don't know what it is about this story. I keep struggling to remember facts from it. It's really strange. It's like it keeps leaving my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't know. It's very weird. Anyway,
weird.
Yeah, I don't know why. I wasn't bored as I read it. It just won't stick with me.
Have you considered remembering?
No, I struggle, but I don't know. Yeah. So what are we reading? I don't know if you guys struggled at all with the story, but I kind of did, even though I don't know why.
Yeah. Okay, shall I do my introduction or not? Are we still yakking?
Girls can do your introduction.
You're so eager.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be all informal, chatty chat, and
we've got a highly structured period of informal chit chat.
Right. That's sort of like ruined when you're like, this is the informal chit chat portion of the show. Gerald's clearly not good at it. Gerald loves the structure. He's like, I just want to say what we're reading.
Exactly. Structure is everything in my life.
Yeah.
If I ain't got structure, I ain't got nothing.
Did you know this is a chat show?
Is it?
No, it's mostly literature analysis with some chat.
167 episodes in, and now you tell me.
Okay, so what do we read?
Right. So this week we have been reading Grandma's Porch by Alexia Tolas. If you haven't read the story yet, pause the podcast, go and read the story, and then please return. We're in the head of a young, unnamed girl who gets dropped off at her grandma's house on an island in the Caribbean, or the Caribbean if you're British, when her father, with whom she normally lives, moves away. There she discovers the lure of a good-looking boy new to the island, and as their relationship deepens and develops, there is resistance from her grandma and jealousy from her friends. It's not very insightful, is it, that?
It's one of those cliffhanger summaries. Where it's like,
yes.
That's what happens.
It's like I'm writing a synopsis for a book or something. It's just...
Yeah, like a byline to tease people into buying the book.
Yeah. Or the end of a chapter, and but people need to turn the page. I don't know.
Yeah. So.
Also, her name's Helena.
Yes, her name is Helena.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That's why her creepy uncle is into her, because his ex name is Helen. Also, he's creepy. He's sort of just into anyone.
She's called Helena. Oh, I didn't know that.
She's in like extra. She's in
I think I died.
more risk than most people because. So in the story, she has this Uncle Gully who is a rapey drunkaholic. By rapey, I mean rapist, and he everyone knows this about him apparently, and. His ex's name is Helen, and the fact that her name is Helena, everyone just knows she's at greater risk.
I see it now.
Yeah, this reminds me of The Missing Staircase, which I'll get into in a little bit. But Andy, what did you think of this story overall?
So, the dialect was a challenge getting into it, but then later she specifically called me out on it when what did she say? Hold on, it's when she's talking like white people. Oh yeah, they don't like to talk to her because she talks like real white people, but that's only when she's in school.
Yeah.
Because in my head I was like, oh man, this is okay. It's in this authentic dialect, and I'll get it, but man, I sure wish it wasn't. And then she made me feel conscious about my stereotypes.
Good. I'm glad she did that. Because I had the opposite reaction to the dialect. This isn't a dialect. It's just like a particular syntax or like rhythm that they use. But I actually really liked it. It's one of the parts of the story that I enjoy it. We've read quite a few stories that do this, that put in a very particular pattern of speaking. And I like when you can do it in a way that's easy for me to learn. So yeah, it took like a couple paragraphs before I learned it. And then by the end of it, I wasn't thinking about it anymore. And that's really difficult to do. It's really easy to mess that up and just make it painful throughout. And I don't know if part of that is just like having had experience reading a whole bunch of stories that do this, I'm like, more ready for it or more open to it. But I learned the pattern really quickly, and that is a skill in and of itself.
Yeah, I'm the same. When I started reading, I thought, dialects, and normally I don't like stories with dialect. I think it makes it more difficult to consume for somebody who doesn't understand the dialect and doesn't speak the dialect. But actually, I think it added something. Even it wasn't only not that difficult to learn, but I thought it added something to the sort of atmosphere of the story.
Yeah. So we keep talking about the story, the Caribbean. So where exactly does the story take place, Gerald? And how does the author reveal it in its location? I mean, I cheated. I just read her bio and figured it out. But, there are clues. So if you want to take it away.
I don't know. No, because I had to look, because I don't know anything about this area of the world. And I had to do Google Maps. And it's one of the islands. Is it? I mean, because they talk about Long Island, which is one of the other islands. So I'm not sure if it's what was it called? Something like Harbour's Island or something.
Well, they're on Long Island. Was there a Harbour's one as well?
I thought so.
Because there was a lot of islands.
What I was very confused by.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know before this story that there was a non-New York Long Island.
I mean, we needed to be honest.
I was like, oh, wow, that's weird for such a Caribbean story to be set in New York. All right, I was like, oh, this doesn't sound like New York.
No, it does. It is Long Island because right at the start she says, I ain't eat this good since I come back to Long Island. And she's talking about when she went away to study in America. So she obviously came back to Long Island and then was living elsewhere on Long Island and then went to stay with Grandma.
Yeah. I mean, for me, what tipped it was a little later, which is introducing Dimitri. Dimitri's from Nassau, and that's the main island in the Bahamas that almost everyone goes to when they're vacationing. So I knew that island, and I was like, got it. But also, before that, I had sort of assumed it was the Bahamas because that's where the author is from. But then once I saw that, then I knew for sure that it was. Yeah. But it's funny because this story actually kept reminding me a lot of when we read Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn, which we read on the book club. And that one takes place in Jamaica, not the Bahamas. But there was a lot of like sort of similar themes. My sense is this family isn't quite as, so in Here Comes the Sun, the family is like subsistence level poverty, like just barely surviving. And in this one, it's like a tiny step up from that, where like they're still poor, but they're like not, like in the other one, it was like they didn't even have paved floors, right? I don't think this is quite at that level, but there was a lot of like similar themes about like the way that women were seen and used and everything like that, or just like the casual rapist that everyone just knows lives in the village kind of thing going on. So there was a lot of parallels between the two stories. So I kept thinking a lot of Here Comes the Sun. And I think that might be part of why whenever I try to think about this story, instead I just think about the other one, which is kind of strange.
They were quite similar, yes. When you think about that, and think about the characters that people just accept, and the drunk uncle who touches people, and everybody knows he's a bit touchy, and it's just accepted that's just how he is, which is not good.
Yeah, and it's telling that Dimitri and his mother are coming from another island and aren't aware of this, and like no one clues them in, like, hey, just so you know, that guy hasn't been like kicked out of society, which is why I was saying it made me think of The Missing Staircase, very extreme version of that. So the missing staircase, I don't know if you guys know about this, but it's like a thing that people talk about like in therapy and stuff. So it's like in a family where there's someone who has a particular behavior that everyone copes with by just ignoring, and then an outsider comes in and they don't know about that behavior. So it's like there's like a step missing in the staircase, and they just trip into it. So like the common example is like having a very racist family member who tells racist jokes all the time, and every Thanksgiving one just ignores them as they say it, and they're just like, hey, and they just kind of like continue, and then like somebody else comes in and they get really offended by the racist joke, and everyone's just like, yeah, that's just how he is though. We all just kind of let him do the racist joke, and we just like don't. That's the missing staircase. Everyone knows that's there except the new person coming in. So it was like an extreme version of that. Everyone in this village knows, don't go to Gully's house or you're gonna get raped. But then these like outsiders come in and no one warns them, and I was just like, wow.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they thought Dimitri would be okay because he was a boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Nasty.
Yeah. And I think there's something about that nastiness of it, the predatory men, older men preying on young kids, because these are like teenagers in my reading of it. And how everyone just kind of turns the other cheek was again a lot like Here Comes the Sun in some ways, and it just I feel like I'm getting a bit like exhausted by the narrative. Seems so dismissive, but there just comes a point where it's a little bit like, because this is something that we talk about a lot in recent years as well with everything happening with Me Too, which is a very important conversation. But it's starting to feel like sometimes when I read these stories, I dwell on that a little bit too much, where it just starts to feel like I just want to break. I guess that's the best way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean. That and sometimes, like we sometimes have a series of what we call MFA stories, which are, you know, different stories, but they're all pretty similar. They're all sort of written in the same way, and sort of checking boxes for things that you should put into your short stories. And it's kind of hard to find sort of interesting, meaningful short stories that don't fall into those two categories.
And I mean, ultimately, this story isn't about Dimitri's rape. It's just a very distracting part of the story. This is ultimately about Helena's path to her first sexual experience and how she gets there and why she gets there and the reasoning behind it. There's a lot of messages she picks up. Because remember when she's like rejecting Dimitri, then she hears her aunt and her uncle talking about her own parents and how her dad's cheating on her mother. And the aunt basically says, but that's okay because his mom isn't like, her, you know, Helena's mother isn't there for him enough sexually. So wouldn't you also cheat? So that's, after she hears that, the very next day she sees Dimitri, she's like more willing to push past more boundaries because she just got that messaging, right? So like you see that, like you see how Helena's like sexual experience to the first time she has sex, which is really kind of where it ends, how she gets there and what are the messages about like women, the role they play, and also how she kind of gives into it because she finds out that Dimitri's being raped by Gully, so it's kind of like he needs this, so I have to supply it for him kind of thing. So it's really that, but it still felt just like I need a break from all of this sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes we seem to have a run of sort of deeply religious stories as well, with the religious parallels, and we seem to sort of time after time, oh, it's another one of those. I suppose stories do sort of fall into categories, and authors will sort of, looking for a deep and meaningful theme with a story, will naturally choose one of these sort of big categories.
So what's the religious parallel for you?
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't think there was a religious parallel with this one. Or if there was, I didn't pick it up.
Oh. You're just saying that because you said that this felt like a religious run, or you weren't including this in that run?
No, I wasn't including this in that run.
Because religion was certainly mentioned, but as I sort of like where some of the rules are coming from for this society.
Yeah, I think so, and it's just part of their life. It's just it's just one of the things they did. There was no strong religious undercurrent, I didn't think.
Yeah. So Andy, I would say that this story is primarily about Helena's sort of sexual, I don't know, coming of age. I don't know. But was there any other themes in the story for you that you picked up on?
Yeah, that was, certainly the main thrust, but just sort of like the little snippets of life, the little pieces of their daily routines, how the whole community interacts with each other. It built a fuller picture that we could set everything in. We could hang more hooks on.
Mm-hmm. Could you keep track of all the different characters, all the uncles and stuff? And if you couldn't,
no, obviously not.
Obviously not. I don't think anyone could. But okay. Okay. Do you think that had any effect on the story or on this setting? Like, I almost feel like it was intentional, but I don't know if it just irritated you or if it had an effect on you as well.
No, I think having so many people coming in and out, like, it brought to mind a summer where all these kids are running around and you make new friends, you lose friends, you got different family members popping in and out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think also it gave you a sense of how the family is very sprawling and it's very sort of like open door, people in and out. And it's kind of hard, even when you have these adults, but they're all sort of distracted in their own thing, to kind of keep track of all the teens, which I guess like is also part of this culture. You don't have to keep track of all the teens, but like these teens are running around doing all kinds of stuff. Like they are out there. I kind of like the spin the bottle scene as well, because so normally when there's a spin the bottle thing coming up, the girl who has a crush on the boy thinks this is her opportunity to maybe get a kiss in, but that's not what happened here. She's like, he's definitely gonna somehow magically spin it on one of the hot chicks, but he magically spins it on her. How is this kid so good at spinning the bottle on exactly who he wants? Talented bottle spinners.
Yeah. He's one of those guys, isn't he? That's good looking, he's sporty, he's got everything going for him, and he just makes you sick.
Except for being raped by his.
Yeah, well, yeah, there was that, yeah. Oops.
Yeah. And that was really sad. Like when he gets really mad at Rico because he realizes Rico. So her friends are Rico and Glenn. And it seems like Glenn has a crush on her, but isn't overbearing or creepy. And Rico is gay, and everyone kind of knows it, but doesn't say anything about it. And Dimitri, who again is the outsider coming in, when he finds out, he gets really mad. But what he says is, he thinks he'd like it, but he doesn't know how it actually feels. And that's a little heartbreaking. Like, yes, part of it's the homophobia that's embedded in this culture. But the other part of it is also just like, he is only associating gay sex with this rape that he's experiencing. And it's kind of sad.
Yeah, there's a bit that Dimitri was saying. He say Rico needs straightening out. He needs big man to teach him what being fussy really feel like, and that's a sort of heartbreaking statement that it's not all sort of coy and being cute and stuff. There's a darker side to it that Dimitri knows about anyway.
And going back to what you were saying about the MFA checklist, like that's why I feel so weird that the story won't really stick with me, because that putting in just that little bit of line, that one sentence has both the homophobia and this kid's lived traumatic experiences in one sentence, very subtly, beautifully, where you feel both things at the same time, where you feel like, ugh, this ugly homophobia, oh wait, ooh, right? Like that complexity, the way that she is leading the reader into feeling certain things is very smart. Like it doesn't surprise me. So we didn't mention this yet, but this story won the 2019 Commonwealth Prize for Writers. So what's the full title of that prize? It's the Commonwealth Writers Prize. This is the 2019 short story winner. And last year we read the 2018 short story winner, which was Passage by Kevin Jared Hossein. And I don't know. It definitely ticks all the boxes like you were talking about. Like I can see what she's doing sometimes, and it's really smart. She got that the dialect, the syntax across really cleverly, really quickly. She weaves in Bahamian words, slang, references to things in a way that's really easy for you to follow, even if you don't know those words of that culture. She puts in these little lines that just really gut you in a very effective way. So like she's very skilled, like just a very skilled writer. And yet I'm here like a tiny bit like, it's not going to stick with me. And it might just be the exhaustion from this kind of story.
Maybe it isn't. I think this is going to stick with me a little bit. I think there's a lot in here to chew on. I think there's a lot to get out of this story, and to enjoy the storytelling. I think it's really well told. It's really well written, and I enjoy. She gets across the environment and the situation really well. So I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't know. This is one of my favorite ones for a little while, at least. It was good to read. It kept me going with new little tidbits all along. That's what I like. I like just little treats and like little funny turns of phrases.
Yeah,
that's all I need.
Treats. Yeah. And you know what? That one heartbreaking line by Dimitri, where he has both the homophobia and his traumatic lived experience, probably will stay with me because that's a really interesting way to look at, because one of the things that struck out to me is how the adults, except for Granma, on some level, all kind of suck a little bit, but the teens don't really suck too much other than their typical teenish kinds of ways of like petty jealousies and crushes, but like nothing bad. Like not even the hot girls or the names Jenna and Nina. Not even them. But you see Dimitri, you see like the lessons that he's learning from the adults that are going to kind of make him one of them as well. You know what I mean? Like, how do you bridge the gap from who the teens are to who the adults are? Are the teens going to break that pattern, or are they doomed to repeat it? And you see Dimitri and the doomed to repeat it cycle. Yeah.
Do you think? I don't know. I think he sees the behavior of the adults for what it is, and I think he understands that it's not right. But I think he's a pretty cool dude. He's a good looking dude. Well, we presume he is anyway. So I think he's sort of taking control of the situation with Helena, and being the one sort of moving the relationship on. But I don't know. I sort of get the feeling that he's deeper thinking than the adults around.
Yeah. I mean, he's pressuring her into sex in a way that I think for many, many decades was explained away as like, yeah, but he's not like forcing himself on her. That's kind of expected of teen boys to push the boundary a little bit. So like, it's not too bad. Like, it's awkward. Sexual experiences, whatever. But I think one of the things that we're learning more and more is that's the behavior, though, that can very easily, not for all boys, but for some boys, tip over into the kind of predators that create a lot of problems, that do go too far, that create the kind of culture that you see in, particularly like on college campuses and things like that, where like most of the guys are fine, but a few of them, because they've heard that narrative all their life a little bit, where like, guys pushing boundaries a little bit, it's to be expected. They take that a little too to heart and use it as an excuse to go way too far. And I'm not saying Dimitri's necessarily going to cross that line, or that we saw that line crossed in this particular story. But again, because of the Me Too movement, and we think about what are the messages that kids are getting, I did sort of see him push, and I'm just like, I hear myself excusing it a little bit, like, yeah, well, teenagers are horny, and like I'm doing that as well a little bit. But it's that excusing that leads some guys to become sorry. So I don't know.
It's really hard, isn't it? It's really hard to because you don't want to condone predatory behavior or anything that looks like it might be leading towards predatory behavior, but they're just sort of kids' hormones and stuff like that.
It's weird,
and I think he when she resisted his advances initially. His sexual advances. He didn't push it. He didn't there was quite a long time in the story anyway before they actually had sex. So I think that was good, and she was she was ready for it. That sounds really bad. Sorry. You know what I mean.
It was her first, but it almost seemed like it happened a little bit out of guilt. Actually, since we're talking about this, one of the things that I do like that I'm seeing more of in, like, I don't know if they're also doing in the Bahamas, but that I see them doing here is teaching teen kids, removing the taboo of actually talking about like consent and limits just out loud. Like, imagine if these kids had stopped and said, how far do we want to go? What are we comfortable with? And like some teens are starting to do that. I've like seen this and like they talk about it on like Tumblr and stuff. Like, that's good. That's probably very healthy. Like, you don't do it in the moment because it'll ruin the vibe, but at some point where things aren't hot and heavy, having that conversation is a good thing for kids to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, and they're aware of it, and they're aware themselves that there are boundaries, and they should be respectful of their prospective partners and things like that. So it's all good.
Yeah, and also this had the very gendered thing of everyone's looking to her to put on the brakes and not him. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Any other sort of?
Yeah. It's a funny story because it's I don't know, there's it's a good story, it's an enjoyable story, but there's not that much to say about it, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder if this is the downside of reading as many short stories as we do. You get a little bit of a fatigue with certain narratives where after a while you're just like, yeah, but like there's nothing like too new here, right? Like, so we don't know what it necessarily say.
True. Yeah.
The very frank, honest look of how this particular girl got to the first time that she had sex and how it's not right. Like, we tend to have a few stories of how that happens, some good, some horrible, but this was kind of in the middle. There was a gray spot here that was explored, which isn't, it felt honest and interesting, and it did that while bringing in gender norms, religious mores, all kinds of stuff, family dynamics.
Yeah, and also sort of generational issues of what is acceptable and what's reasonable behavior and what isn't, and so I think it's good for that. But yeah, it's sort of hard to find anything to. It's a good story. It's an interesting story, but there's nothing no sort of hard hitting thing that we can really get our teeth into about it. I don't think it's one of those good stories, but there's nothing much to really sort of get excited about.
Andy, would you add anything to what we're saying?
Well, yes, like it doesn't have a lot of layers. It's the things it hits, and it hits them well. But there's like 2 layers, and then you're done. You've explored everything.
Yeah. But you said this is one of your favorites in a while.
Well, yeah, because it was nice to read. It was just.
Yeah.
Like the last couple of stories were, I don't know, offensive to my eyes.
I see. All right. So it sounds like we're ready to rate it.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. We're 30 minutes in. Yeah, my rating's gone up and down a bit. And it's sort of. It's my feelings about the story as a whole. It's good, but is it brilliant? No, but it's not bad, and so I'm going to go 4.5.
Okay. I am sort of hovering before a 4.5 and a 5 as well, but going with what my new sort of mental rating is, a 5 is a story that's really well crafted, that there's really no flaws in it. But above a 5 means I personally started screaming about it, so this is a 5 then by that rubric.
I'm going to give it a nice 4, a good 4.
How? You said that this was one of your recent favorites.
Because 4 is good.
Yeah, 4 is good. All right.
What's the highest rating you've ever given the story, Andy?
I gave one a 6. What was that one? It was one of the ones. It was one of the earlier ones from my tenure on the show.
Wow.
It was definitely one that ended in everybody died or gave up.
Everybody died.
Okay, so are we ready to do the game?
Yeah. I thought you were looking at scores or something.
No, I was trying to find where I put my submission for next week because I remembered I got to do that. I know I put it.
Okay, so before we do the game, what would you like to submit for next week, Andy?
I have She Said, He Said by Hanif Qureshi.
Okay.
Ooh.
And I'm submitting Javi by Hang On. Or maybe Javi, but I'm going to go with Javi. Short for Javier. Hang On.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the quiz this week is sort of loosely related, since rum was mentioned a few times. We're going to do cocktails.
Ooh.
Not necessarily rum cocktails, because there aren't that many, according to my research. But I'm going to tell you I'm going to read out a cocktail and some ingredients, and you've got to tell me what's missing from
Okay.
from the ingredients. What? Yeah, you like it?
All right.
Yeah.
So, and Anna, right? So we start with Andy. Margarita is tequila, juice, whatever that is, sugar, syrup, salt, and is it triple sec, sugar, or pepper?
So, my internet conveniently froze while you were reading those.
Oh, okay. Would you like me to read it again?
Please do.
Okay, it will be my pleasure. So, if you were going to make a margarita, what would you need other than tequila, some juice or other? It says sugar, syrup, salt, and would you also want triple sec or sugar or pepper?
I would say sugar.
And you would be wrong. It's triple sec.
Really?
Well, apparently, it's the internet. Who knows? Annie's Bloody Mary.
Trust
Bloody
the internet.
Mary. Yeah. Well, who would? Comprises peppered vodka, apparently, vermouth, tomato juice, red wine, Tabasco sauce, lemon juice, salt, pepper, and is it tomato sauce? Is it Worcestershire sauce, or is it chili powder?
Worcestershire sauce.
Of course, it's Worcestershire sauce, or Worcester sauce,
Right.
as we call it. Okay, Andy, martini, dry vermouth, a lemon twist, and is it coffee, ice, or gin? Martini.
I believe it is gin.
You would believe correctly. Well done. Annie's mojito is rum, sugar syrup, lime juice, crushed ice, and lemonade, or mint leaves, or strawberries.
Mint leaves.
Mint leaves. You know your cocktails. No one's saying anything more.
I had a bunch of mojitos on Friday, actually.
Oh, very good. Okay, Andy. Cuba Libre. However it's pronounced. Rum, Coke, and apple juice, orange juice, or lime juice.
Orange juice.
Lime juice, it is.
Of course.
Anise, Cosmopolitan, vodka, triple sec, lemon, sugar syrup, and apple juice, cranberry juice, kiwi juice.
Cranberry juice?
Cranberry juice is correct. Just a couple more. Andy, Pina Colada rum, coconut cream, pineapple slice, salt, and pepper or vodka or pineapple juice.
Pineapple juice.
Pineapple juice is correct. Anise, Mai Tai. Dark rum, orange liqueur, pineapple juice, sugar syrup, and orgeat syrup, salt, or lime juice.
That first one?
Yeah, I don't know what it is either, but it is that one, yeah.
I don't know why you put it in if you couldn't pronounce it, so it must be right.
Yeah, there you go.
That was literally my logic. I can't say.
Good logic. All right, a couple more. Andy, because this is such good fun. Andy, Moscow Mule is vodka, obviously, sugar syrup, ginger beer, and pepper or lime juice or ginger beer.
Pepper.
Lime juice. Anise, Blue Lagoon. Is it vodka, lemonade, and either WKD, Wicked, Vimto, or Blue Curacao?
Blue Curacao.
Blue Curacao is correct. You are,
blue there somewhere.
you are the winner. And the yeah, true. And the tiebreaker, which we won't do, the first distillation of rum took place in the 1620s in the Caribbean. And rum boasts being the first spirit to be manufactured and distilled. So there.
Nice.
So
Okay.
that's good. 1620. So what are we reading next week, Anise?
We're reading Javi by Han Ong. But before you go, tell us what you thought of this award-winning short story in our Facebook group, The Literary Roadhouse Readers, or on Twitter @LitRoadhouse, or our website, literaryroadhouse.com. Want to read novels from authors that come from around the world, such as Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Fenn? Then join us on the Literary Roadhouse Book Club, where we discuss a novel each month, and we strive to read diversely. And lastly, this story has inspired us to explore beyond Nassau in the Bahamas, support our totally literary expedition, and podcast expenses at patreon.com/literaryroadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with teens playing Spin the Bottle in your life. Until next time, read a good story.
Yay, spin the bottle.
Definitely.
Bing.
Give him something better to do. No, read this amazing story about what happened.
Hey. We're still live, by the way.
Oh, good. An extra.